Here I've got a 2016 Chevy Cruze, belongs to my neighbor. So he bought this car brand new. He ran this car into the ground. He's a young kid, teenager. So he wants me to change the inner tie rod. So it turns out that he took the car to a shop. It was sitting for about 3 weeks, and when he went to go check up on it, they hadn't even touched the car. So they said they're super busy, and it'll be a while before they could get to the car. On top of that, they told him it needs a inner tie rod, and labor on it would be like $350 or something crazy like that. So of course he thought that was like a stupid high price, and he decided to take the car away from them since they hadn't even started on it, and he brought it to me to get it fixed. Now if you're wondering, well, if they're your neighbor, why don't they just bring you the car? And they do this all the time, even though they literally live next door to me. What they always do is take the car to a shop first, and after that the car always ends up in my garage for one reason or another. Sometimes it's because the shop quoted way too high of a price and I end up doing the job for much less, or they paid the shop to fix a car and it doesn't get fixed, so it ends up in my garage where I get to diagnose it properly and fix it. Someone told him it needs an inner tie rod. I told him if I'm doing the inner tie rod, I might as well do the outer. And I go to pull this thing into the garage. One of the worst Chevys I ever drove. It just sounds horrible. So I started jacking up the side because I could hear all the noise on the front left side. As I'm jacking up the car, I'm like, why is the body of the car going up, yet the wheel is still making contact? Look at all this gap right here. That is not normal. So it didn't take long for me to find that the strut itself is broken. I don't know what's going on up there, but there's way too much play in this strut. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put the car back on the ground. Tie rods is the least of his problems. The turbo on this thing is blown out, so it has no power at all. Recently the solenoids for like the VVT, they went bad and the car wouldn't go over like 5 miles per hour. I told him, hey man, this thing still needs a turbo, because I looked at it over a year ago. And I told him, but if you want it at least drivable, we could change the solenoids, because they were actually like locked up. There was a piece of debris like stuck, jammed inside of it. So we changed the VVT solenoids and they got the car back to driving, but the turbo's still bad. So it has no power, but at least you could get up to 40, 50 miles per hour, whatever, right? But it just lacks the power because the turbo is not working. And the suspension on this car just run into the ground. It sounds so bad. Chevy did not deserve this, guys. 2016, it was, I remember when he first bought it, really nice. The body looked perfect, drove like a brand new car. And now this thing is practically, the way it drives, just feels like it's ready for the junkyard. I don't know if you guys could see that haziness on the windshield. That's all cigarettes and weed. I mean, see what I'm talking about? Yeah. I remember one day I saw him driving by. Well, technically he wasn't driving. Someone else was driving a car, and he was standing on the roof of the car as they drove past my house. Hey, girls just want to have fun, right? Anyway, that's it. I'm not putting tie rods on this thing. It needs more than just tie rods. And if we come underneath the car, guys, that tie rod is definitely bent. Look at the stabilizer link. It's broken off from where it belongs, right there on the sway bar. This car wasn't some sort of an accident. I'd imagine that this lower control arm is bent in one way or another. You know, it's funny how when people call me, hey, do you put lower control arms on, or do you put tie rods on? Yeah, okay, yeah, bring it over, I could do it. And they neglect to tell you that the car was in a freaking accident, because at that point I could tell you, hey, it's gonna need a lot more than just your tie rods. You get what I'm saying? It's crazy. So I just talked to the owner right now, because he was in AutoZone at the moment, and I told him, you know what, man, just return, don't buy anything else. Anything you did buy, just go ahead and return it, because this is going to need a lot more than just tie rods. And the reason why I'm telling him to return it is because he's already talking about how he doesn't have enough money to pay me for my labor to replace the tie rods, that he would have to owe me money. I said, you know what, fine, I'll do it. You know, you're my neighbor, so fine. Since this car clearly needs more than just tie rods, buy the stuff from Rock Auto. It's cheaper, easier on your wallet, and if he can't afford just the tie rods and the labor, then I guarantee you he can't afford to buy all of this stuff from AutoZone. It gets way too expensive. So of course the bill is going to go up, but it's definitely cheaper buying everything from Rock Auto. So that's the game plan. I'm going to wait till he shows up so I can show him what's going on. And that's it. Pour this turd out of here and get the next car in the garage. We are back in this 16 Chevy Cruze. The owner took my advice and returned all those parts to AutoZone. We have parts from Rock Auto. It's a few days later, obviously. So all the parts came in, minus the outer tie rod, and I figured outer tie rod super easy to change. I could always do it at a different time, no big issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on the rest of the work right now. We're doing 2 front stabilizer links, left inner and outer tie rod, left lower control arm, and left strut assembly. I pulled this thing in and this windshield is so freaking nasty from smoking in the car. It's so hazy, and it's one of those things that it doesn't look that bad right now until you're outside driving and the sun tries to reflect off of the windshield and you just see how just hazy all this looks, and you can't really see through it that well. It's just nasty. Okay, I'm gonna get some Windex and clean it, but I'm only gonna clean half of it. I'm gonna clean the driver's side. That way the owner has something to compare it to. He could see a difference and kind of give him a hint, hey man, clean your crap. You know what I'm saying? So so I've cleaned the inside of the glass on the driver's side only. I haven't even touched the outside. The outside of the glass, the whole car is filthy, but this is just to show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, so I cleaned all of this right here. Let's have a look at my whiteboard over there. Let me zoom in for you guys. See if this works. You could kind of make out the whiteboard, right? Read what's on it. Let's go over here. Look at that. And I'm going to leave it like that, okay? So once you start driving, I'm sure this is going to be very obvious that, hey, this side looks cleaner. And I don't know, maybe he'll give his car a car wash or something. Who knows? Yeah, this is not normal. Here goes our broken stabilizer link. And I don't think I've ever seen a strut break like that. You can see how it's like completely going sideways. That's crazy. All because of a pothole, apparently. Which to me seems more like a crater, but whatever. And there you have it. Isn't that crazy? I did not take that apart. That's exactly how it came off of the car in pieces. That's the first time I've ever seen that. That's crazy. So initially I wanted to just kind of set the knuckle aside. I have to disconnect the lower control arm from it and the tie rod. And I thought of some way to like support it over here so it doesn't pull the CV shaft out of its joint. But the more I think about it, it's probably a stupid and dumb idea. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull the nut out of the CV shaft and completely remove it. That way we could put the knuckle aside over here and not worry about the CV shaft, you know, damaging it or anything like that. And there we have it. Got the CV shaft and the tie rod supported up here out of the way. Got the knuckle off to the side. It's being supported by a jack stand. And the brake hose is not being stressed in any way, or the ABS sensor. And now we have all the space in the world to work on this lower control arm and to get this broken portion of the stabilizer link off of the stabilizer bar. Sure, there's ways around this. You don't have to do all of this just to change a lower control arm. But if all this stuff has to come off anyway to change all the parts that I'm changing, why not just make your life easy, guys? How's that saying go? Work smarter, not hard. No, not that one. Oh, don't be a dummy. So let's go ahead and get this control arm out. So I got that broken piece of the stabilizer link off. We got the lower control arm off. So I was hoping to take advantage of the tie rods and go ahead and at least put on the new inner tie rod and reuse the outer, since I have all this space available. Of course you can do it with everything in the way, but it just makes sense to try to take advantage of all this open space that I have. But if you guys can see this, it's very clear that not only is the inner tie rod bent, but the outer tie rod itself has a slight bend to it. So I don't think I'm going to mess with this right now. I'm just going to wait for that outer tie rod to arrive and I'll do it all at once. There we have it. New strut is installed. Stabilizer link, lower control arm. Of course, you're going to wait on the last part, the outer tie rod, to show up before we mess with the tie rods. I already went on the front right side and installed the other stabilizer link. Now everything is torqued down, okay? So this thing is good to go. And the sway bar links were kind of tricky to get on because the bushings on the sway bar itself are fused to the sway bar. So it's kind of like a preload. So in order to get these things to line up right here so you can put the, you know, the stud through it, you have to force that bar down. So I just used a pry bar and forced the sway bar itself down in order to line all of this stuff up. I hope that makes sense. But that's about it. It put up a fight, but it did get done. So at this point, I'm just gonna go ahead, pop the wheels back on this turd and park it on the street, and we'll just wait for the last part to show up. So I got the Chevy Cruze back on the ground. The lug nuts are all torqued down. This thing is ready to get parked out on the street. But then one of my other customers showed up with her 97 Toyota Avalon. Like 2 weeks ago, I told her it needs a radiator. It's got a pretty bad leak and it's gonna start overheating on you very soon. And she's like, well, it's been driving fine. We have no, issues of it overheating or nothing. But they were like, let's just go ahead and order parts ahead of time and blah, 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 right? So they're driving the car today, and guess what? It starts to smoke from underneath the hood and it starts to overheat. So of course, hey, can we bring the car over today? Yeah, of course, of course. It's not a big issue until it is, right? So they bring it in, park it right there. All of a sudden, she tries to start it up and it doesn't start. She says she has to jump start it just to get it started today. And now it's click, 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 click. I got my fingers crossed that it's just a dead battery and we don't have an issue with the alternator, or even worse, the starter, because now it's blocking this car. So I'm gonna go jump start this car. Hopefully it starts up. I could get that turd out of here, and then I could get this turd out of here. I got my crappy AutoZone jump starter connected. Someone who watches my channel was telling me to buy a good one. He sent me a link and I'm gonna buy it. I just haven't gotten around to it. So for now, we still got this piece of junk. Let's see if this thing starts up. Yep. So it really is just a bad battery. Let's make sure it's charging right now while the car is running. I'm assuming it is because they drove it over here just fine. As you can see, I moved the Toyota already and I got my multimeter here. I did check it while the engine was running and it's charging just fine. So we simply just have an old worn out battery on it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and just leave this here for a few hours, let everything cool off, and then I'll get to this radiator job later on today. Taking this Cruze out for a test drive real fast before I park it, and I can immediately notice a difference. It sounds way better. Of course, the alignment is still off because of the bent tie rod, but it sounds pretty normal. It sounded pretty bad before. You can imagine with a strut that's literally broken in two. You can imagine how this thing sounded with a strut that's literally broken in two pieces and everything was flexing. So yeah, pretty good. Let me go ahead and park it. So it's been 2 days and we are back on the Chevy Cruze. We got the tie rods in and hopefully they are the correct parts and everything's gonna fit. Because the owner has been needing his car. He's been asking me about it. And there isn't much I could do, if we're waiting on parts, we're waiting on parts. So it is what it is. I told him I'd get it in as soon as we get the parts. And I literally just picked up this box off of my front porch like 10 minutes ago. So here we are working on it. All right, so as far as the old tie rods, I couldn't get the outer separated from the inner, so I just opted for removing the whole thing all at once. I ended up using this tool right here. Now normally I would just go ahead and cut the outer or the inner tie rod, get the part off, get the bellow out, and then I can use this tool to remove the inner tie rod, which is super easy. This one's more of a hassle, more of an inconvenience. But the thing was, with parts like this, especially we've been waiting like over a week for these parts, it would suck to go ahead and cut this, right? And all of a sudden this is garbage, only to find out the new parts don't actually fit and we don't have time to wait. You get what I'm saying? So I didn't want to damage any of this, and now that I confirmed that everything is going to fit, everything's going to thread in, now I could go ahead and cut this to get our bellow and our clamp out of here. As you can see, everything is installed. I left the clamp loose right here as well as the jam nut, because now I need to put the car on the ground and make some adjustments to try to get the toe as close as possible. Of course, the car still needs to go in for wheel alignment, and to be honest, I'm not sure it is going to go in for one. I just kind of know my customers. So I'm going to try to get the toe as close as I could possibly get it, and then we'll go from there. And once I get my alignment where I want it, I'll go ahead and put the clamp on the bellow. I'll lock up the jam nut, and the next shot will be taking it out for a test drive. All right, so I'm out test driving the Chevy Cruze, and given the circumstances of the car, like I said, this thing is pretty much run into the ground, but with all the new parts up front, it actually sounds really good. It doesn't sound like everything is clunking and banging around up front like it used to. So I'm happy with the way it sounds, and it's driving pretty straight down the road. If I let go of the steering wheel, it's not really pulling or anything like that. And of course you can see the steering wheel is a little crooked to go straight. That's not a big deal. Of course, I'm always going to tell the owner in work like this, so always take it in for a wheel alignment. But what I did is I used the measuring tape to get the two front wheels parallel to each other. And so the steering wheel being off isn't a concern. As long as the two front wheels are parallel to each other, it's not going to chew up the tires. I hope that makes any sense. So I'll tell the owner to take it in for a wheel alignment as soon as possible, and that'll be it. Besides that, he could come pick it up and this turd is all set. So about 2 days after this repair, the owner told me that the car is driving better than ever. He said, in fact, he feels like it's driving better than before it got into the accident. So there's that. It's been about 2 months since this repair, and the owner still has not taken it in for a wheel alignment. Apparently, it's good enough. Hey, I told you I know my customers. All I could do is recommend things to people. If I recommend a wheel alignment, that's all I could do. I could tell people go get it done, but if they don't actually do it, that's beyond me. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching.